So you go ahead and start the slideshow, Courtney. So we're not looking at the notes. There we go. There we go. Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our CASH Statewide Facilities Monthly Meeting. Good morning. My name is Alan Rising. I'm the CASH Chair, and my day job, I also work with the Long Beach Unified School District as their Business Services Administrator. So if you're just coming on, good morning and welcome to our meeting. I'd like to take a moment and welcome our first-time attendees and any of the new members who are joining us today. Please take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat box. We'd like to know who you are and welcome you to our monthly meeting here with CASH. So thank you for being here today. I also want to remind all the attendees that the attendees are muted, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear your comments or questions. We do ask that you use the chat feature to let us know what those questions are. When you do that, make sure that you include all attendees to ensure that we get to see that question. And as we go through the presentations, we will attempt to address as many of those questions as we possibly can moving forward. And also as a reminder, we do ask that you please refrain from using the chat feature for any kind of marketing or any sort of business development. This is really a learning opportunity. This is an opportunity for our partners to talk to us about the happenings at the state and really inform you about what's going on. So we do ask that you refrain from marketing. So with that, we'll move into the first step. So really talking a little bit about CSFRI. This is a partner organization with CASH. This is the California School Facilities Research Institute, is hosting a symposium, our 5th symposium on Thursday, June the 15th, between 10 a.m. to 12 noon. It will be via Zoom, and this is an opportunity to really talk about the impacts that school design have on student learning and student engagement. Registration will be opening tomorrow on the CASH website, so we do ask that you look for that. It's really a great opportunity to look at the work that the CSFRI is doing and how we're really trying to push the envelope on how important school design is on the ability of students and teachers to perform in those spaces. So please look for that and sign up for that symposium. It'll be a great opportunity. So with that, we'll jump to the next slide. We also want to remind everyone that the CASH Legislative Advisory Committee, the LAC, is looking for nominations. The deadline for those nominations is Friday, June the 30th. To nominate yourself or someone else in the industry, we just need a letter of nomination that includes your basic information on your name, title, address, phone number. We also ask that you do give us a photo of that nominee and give us some background on your experience and involvement that you've had in the school industry. We also would like to know your connection and your involvement in CASH. And the reasons why that individual would make a great candidate. We do recommend that if you'd like to be part of the Legislative Advisory Committee, we do accept self-nominations, so don't be hesitant about that. And email those nomination information to Mr. Greg Golick from the CASH staff, and there's his email address there available for you. So very much great opportunity to become more involved and be a part of the inner workings of CASH and the work that we do in school districts. So moving to the next page, we're going to move right into our agenda. We have a great agenda today. We're bringing in all of our state partners to talk to us about what's happening in their area of expertise and their area of responsibility. So we're first going to start with asking Barbara Campanert to come up on the screen. There you are, Barbara. Good morning, and talk to us a little bit about what's happening with the Office of Public School Construction.
Good morning. Thank you, Alan. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. And we do have a few updates for the Office of Public School Construction. We don't have anything big going on right now, but we do want to share a few reminders on some things that will help you make your application process go a little bit smoother. And starting with the priority funding round, so we do have a certification filing round open right now that closes on June 8th. If you are one of the districts that still has a project that is subject to the priority funding requirements, this list is going to start shrinking now that we've gone to the direct apportionment model. But for those of you that may still have a project there, please note that June 8th is the deadline to submit for the next round. And then speaking of the direct apportionments, we did want to remind everyone that if you are on the workload list, or if you are on the applications received beyond bond authority list, and maybe we're getting close to the top, potentially for general fund dollars, if that is approved in the budget, you might want to take a look at your plan approvals to make sure that your plan approvals from the Division of the State Architect and possibly the Department of Education, to see if those are coming up on any expiration dates. You do need to have valid plan approvals in place at the time that we are taking your project for an apportionment at the State Allocation Board, or you need to have started the construction prior to the apportionment. And we're seeing this creep up a little bit for some folks with DSA plans coming up on their expiration date and it not necessarily aligning with the apportionment date. So please take a look at that. If you have questions, once you've looked at your date and you're trying to figure out the timing, you can reach out to your OPSC project manager to have further discussions about that as well. And then I did want to share that we sent an email blast earlier this week on Monday related to school board resolutions for identifying a district representative that will be acting on your district's behalf for purposes of State Allocation Board requirements or applications. So we have noticed that there has been an increase in school board resolutions that are not necessarily specific to the State Allocation Board programs. And so we've put a sample school board resolution up on the website, and we did also provide an email blast on Monday that kind of talks about this issue, but we're seeing some board resolutions that maybe authorize a person to sign warrants on behalf of the district, and that's being submitted for purposes of State Allocation Board programs. And it's not quite enough. So when we're seeing a district representative be identified by school districts, we're looking for somebody that basically has the authority to commit the district to the participation for the program requirements. So this could be a long-term commitment for your school district. So the person that is authorized as district representative is basically certifying that you're adhering to all of the laws regarding public school construction, including things like making your RMA deposit for participating on that. So these are long-term projects. These are big dollars. So we're looking to see school board resolutions a little more specific to the State Allocation Board programs. The template on the website is just a template. Some school districts have different ways of doing this, and that's totally fine. So that's up to you. And maybe you don't want it quite as broad as we've put on the template, and that's also fine. So if your board prefers a different way to do this, maybe it's specific to individual projects, different language, that's fine. We're just looking for the resolutions to be a little more specific so that we are confident that this person that you've named or that your school board has named can sign all of the appropriate documents for OPSC. And with that, moving on, so just wanted to highlight that we do not have a July state allocation board meeting. So that is fairly typical. We usually keep that one in reserve just in case things are coming up. So no July state allocation board meeting. Our meeting this month actually did move to next week. So it is actually May 31st at 4 o'clock and still on Zoom. Our members will be on Zoom. There is our public meeting room here at the location in West Sacramento if you're interested. Otherwise, if you log into the Zoom meeting, you'll be able to provide public comment that way. And then also wanted to share that we are continuing to enhance the functionality for OPSC Online, and there is a new financial hardship section that will be added to the online handbook that is coming soon. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to be posting it online soon. We're just doing some final ADA improvements to that document. And then the new project reporting section, we've probably mentioned this before, but it is in a beta version online. And we really would encourage you to take a look at that and provide feedback if you have any anything to share on that, because once it's fully tested, we are going to sunset the old project tracking system. So please take a look at the new project reporting section. Now's your chance if you want to see any enhancements to that section as well. And with that, I think that's it for updates this month. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. So the real quick question on the resolution component. So I would imagine there's quite a few districts that those are out of date and maybe need to be updated. So would you be defaulting, if a district doesn't update, you would default back to the superintendent as being the designated person? Is that what your fallback would be?
Yeah.
And then is your plan, yeah, and then is your plan to remind districts as they file applications, or how do you think that follow-up is going to happen for school districts?
Yeah, so great question. So the superintendent is the fallback. So if we don't have an authorized district representative on file, then your superintendent has to do all the signatures and submittals for your district. And for some districts, that's the same person. And so that's standard process. So no issue with that, no change there. Your superintendent does inherently have that authority, the superintendent for the district. When we are typically seeing this is when a district representative has changed. So Alan, you're absolutely correct. There are a lot that are out of date. We've seen definitely some turnover in district staff recently. It's kind of ongoing. So when we get the new request to update a district representative, we are taking a close look at those resolutions because we have had so many that have not been specific enough. So we are looking at it at that time point. Otherwise, take a look at your own resolutions, make sure they're in place. We don't see it with every application filing. We see it when it changes over from a prior district representative to a new district representative. So that's the point where we will be able to see if that language is going to be sufficient, but it's not on an every application time point.
And kind of a follow-on question that's related to what came up in the chat. If a district has a valid resolution on file with the OPSC, we would not need to submit a new resolution.
That's correct. So if you have a valid resolution, unless that has some sort of expiration date put in place by your board, we will use that one. So if nothing has changed and it's specific to state allocation board programs, then there's no action necessary. So you are okay to stick with that originally named district representative.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. A question just popped up from Donna Jordan. It says, so the resolution does not need to be approved for the superintendent. And I'll try to answer this. Is your resolution would need to be approved by the Board of Education to designate who that responsible party is that would be designated that authority. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if it's going to be anybody other than the superintendent, then the board does need to make that decision. And that is, we cannot start working with that person and accepting documents until your board does make that decision. Superintendent changes, we are usually able to determine on our own because it's public. We find the board minutes, we see that the superintendent is in place there. So that's typically pretty easy for us to find. So if you're just going to default to the superintendent, then no, you don't necessarily need to do a board resolution. unless your board would prefer it. Some boards are very specific in how they want to handle that. So if that's the board process to name the superintendent as the district representative, then please follow your board process on that. Otherwise, superintendent works for us. Anyone else needs to have a resolution from your Board of Education.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Just had another quick question pop in from Gabriella. Did you just say that you are going to be taking down the current PTN tracker system? And is there a timeline for when that's going to happen?
We are taking down the project tracking system once we're done with the beta testing for our new project. It's called project reporting now in OPSC Online. We don't have a specific timeline yet. We really want to make sure that we have an opportunity to get everyone's feedback on the beta version. So we're monitoring that and doing testing on our side as well. So as we get closer to taking that down, we will provide a timeline. But if this is a tool that you use, please take a look at the beta version of project reporting. The sooner we get your feedback, the more likely it is that we can make any changes or adjustments. So if we're getting down to the tail end of it, we won't have as many opportunities to enhance or refine pieces of that. So the sooner the better, so that we can incorporate the feedback.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And again, thank you. I appreciate all the ongoing support and partnership as we move forward. So we will we'll now move on kind of with our agenda, and we're moving on to the California Department of Education. I think we have John Gordon who's going to be with us today. So John, I'm a little disappointed. Your background is a little different. Normally we see these great, wonderful outdoor shots that you bring, and now you just kind of have a very plain background. Is something different? Are you in a different location, or what's going on?
Just feeling a little bureaucratic today.
Okay.
I gotta get out and get some new shots, because the old ones, they get a little stale. So
Got
we'll
it.
just go with
Okay.
what we have for today. So hopefully that meets your needs and everyone else's.
There you go. Okay. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Just to kind of piggyback on what Barbara said a moment ago, if you have a project that requires a renewal letter from CDE or a supersede, please contact me directly. It's probably be the fastest way for you to get that moving, to get it into OPSC. So supersedes, renewals, just contact me directly and we'll get you going on that. Just have a couple updates today. One, just a reminder, as we know, with the fire season starting up, unfortunately, and probably expectedly. And then I know that we're possibly anticipating some flooding. Just wanted to remind folks that we do have an emergency service, school disaster emergency management team at CDE. So if you ever need any resources or need any assistance in that direction, please contact our folks, Joe and Jake, and you can reach them via email, just at emergency services, one word, emergency services @cde.ca.gov. Also wanted to update folks, and a little bit of an not so new update, but we do have a new education administrator in our policy unit. Leslie Taylor has served in that capacity up until the end of last year, and now, and he's been here now for 4 months, but I don't think I've really talked about, but Christopher Miracle is now my counterpart in the policy unit. And Chris has served previously as the executive director for Head Start. And prior to that, he actually worked at CSBA, School Board Association, as their policy and program officer. So we're really excited to have him here. And actually, one of the first major assignments that he and his team is undertaking is revising our Closing the School Best Practice Guide. And so folks may be aware that the AG released a letter back on April 11th regarding school closures and just ensuring that the districts are following AB 1912, which was passed back in September, and just really wanting to ensure that if districts are going through a school closure process, that they're ensuring that the decisions that they make in this process of closing a school does not discriminate against a Black and Latinx student populations. And so his letter outlined a lot of things actually that we currently have had in our Closing the School Best Practice Guide, which was, I believe, created back in 2006. But in the fall of last year, we have had some conversations with the San Francisco Civic Rights Office, as well as our multilingual division here at CDE, about really ensuring that we're providing content, the school districts are providing content in various languages to really ensure that there's community engagement. So that kind of jump-started us to look at this, at our current Closing the School Best Practice and look to revise it based on what's been going on. And so one of the things where our school districts can really help us out is, in addition to looking at this, some of the legislation changes and the AG's letter, that we really want to hear from you. If you have experienced school closure, we would like to interview districts that have gone through that, because there may be some other things that we can add to our best practices that we may not be aware of. So if you've gone through that school closure, you want to participate in a small interview, Jennifer Schwinn on my staff will be conducting the interviews. You can certainly contact me. I could put Jennifer's name in the chat, but we do welcome to have that dialogue, which will help really make our Closing the School Best Practice Guide more robust and more relevant. So hope to hear from folks and get that thing rolling. So with that, Alan, that's my update.
Well, great. Thank you, John. Yeah, you're right. That school closure is such a, contentious issue that having some kind of guide to kind of help districts navigate through that problematic process is really important. So I appreciate the support, and I look forward to working with Chris and his team as we move forward. So really, really nice that we're bringing in some new staff to the program. So thank you very much. I don't see any questions pop up, so we will thank you, and we'll move right into the next part of the state architect. And I see that we have Ida Claire with us today, our state architect, and she'll be telling us a little bit about what's happening with the Division of State Architects. So Ida, welcome.
Hi, Alan. Thank you. I apologize for my delay in derailing your agenda. I am going to speak extemporaneously today instead of providing a slideshow. A little bit about our workload. We have in this current month of May, approximately $481 million in projects being submitted to DSA for review. Our busiest offices are still, sorry, hold on, retrieving my data, Oakland and Sacramento right now. So, but all offices are consistently busy. We're managing plan review with our own staff, using consultants only minimally. Some of those consultant contracts are still issued from the increased workload earlier in the year. We have about $568 million scheduled to come in June in appointments. Other than that, we have started our electronic black check process, which launched May 5th, and that's going well. If there's any issues, reach out to me. We're really hoping that this solves a big part of the issue of any delays in closeout of projects and minimize travel to the DSA offices by plan review staff in by design professionals in going to the office to close out projects. But we will need to call them in if they haven't successfully had the first phase desk review completed to gain approval. Other than that, we are in the middle of regulatory development. Access will be next month in June. We don't have a specific date yet, but it will be, I believe, late in June, where they're holding the Building Standards Commission meeting for approval of our access regulations. Again, regulations that are in the access package are for all gender multi-user restroom facilities, specifically with regard to signage and urinal compartments. That's our major initiative. Again, that will happen in June. July will take a break for the Building Standards Commission. They will resume in August. And in August, there'll be the rest of our packages for plumbing, Cal Green, and structural safety. Our Cal Green initiatives, advancing embodied carbon regulations for building materials for projects 50,000 square feet or greater, will be up for approval, and we are very hopeful that that will advance. Our Sustainable Schools Showcase has the part 2 for the San Bernardino Community College District Sustainability Plan. We try to create a good mix between public school projects and community college projects, but I think there's lessons learned. They're all buildings, so there's lessons learned about the sustainable facility development. So we encourage you to read, connect, and reach out to us or the design professionals in the school districts if you have any questions, so that we can create this network of advancing school facility sustainability of our buildings. I think other than that, that's pretty much all I have for an update, if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ida. I don't see any questions popping up in our chat, and I do appreciate all the hard work on, especially in this code update process, and all of those revisions and all the hard work that's going into that. And again, I thank you for the continued partnership as we work through this. So I don't see any chats coming up. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and move to the next agenda item. Thank you, Ida.
Thank you.
We'll call up, I think Ian Padilla is with us today, as well as Rebecca Colleen from the CASH staff, to talk a little bit about, or maybe not Ian, but I see Rebecca for sure, to talk to us about legislative regulatory updates. Oh, there's Ian. To talk to us a little bit about those regulatory legislative updates. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rebecca and Ian to talk to us about some of the happenings up in Sacramento.
Great. Thank you so much, Alan. We'll talk a little bit about where we are with budget and the bond, and then Ian will talk to you about some of the legislative efforts that are taking place on school facility policy issues. So we are in that time of year where we can see the finish line for the budget conversation and the negotiations, or at least an initial finish line. So the May revision came out recently on May 12th, and that includes the governor's update to his January budget proposals. What this does is it sets up the final framework for those last negotiations on the budget between the governor and the Senate and the Assembly. The governor's revenue estimates are down from where they were in January. He talked about anticipating macroeconomic headwinds due to a drop in capital gains. He increased the size of the anticipated deficit, which he said was $22.5 billion in January. Now he thinks it's $31.5 billion, but he is not anticipating a recession as part of his budget. And he's not proposing to dip into our rainy day fund or our other major reserves. And he's not proposing additional trigger cuts above and beyond what he proposed in January. For the education budget, the Legislative Analyst's Office has a term for what they're seeing the governor propose, and they're saying that the economic condition is manageable, but not significantly weakened. So we are seeing a shift down on the operational funding side for Proposition 98 from $108.8 billion down to $106.8 billion, but that's really a modest decline when we look at the era of unprecedented growth that we've seen in the last couple of years. The dynamic that's being set up here, again, on the operational education budget side, is schools. How big of a COLA do you want, or do you want one-time block grant money that had been previously committed? The governor is saying, let's do an 8.22% COLA and the legislative analyst's office is saying we can't afford 8.22%. We can only afford 5.1%. And so there's going to be discussion about where we land there. The governor is also suggesting to use some reductions in one-time funds. So there was a learning recovery block grant, and then also an arts, music, and instructional materials block grant. And he's saying, let's reduce those commitments, again, one-time money, and instead use the resources to fund our ongoing LCFF costs within Prop 98. Now, the challenge here is that the Legislative Analyst's Office and others are saying, well, maybe you shouldn't be using one-time fund sources to fund these ongoing LCFF costs. So that's the dynamic that's been set up. As far as the general fund promises for school facilities, we've got a couple of items that are in play here, and the governor did not propose any changes to those items in the May revision. So his January proposals still stand. Those are for the school facility program to cut by 100 million the school facility program general fund dollars. So to go from 2.1 billion to 2 billion, that's in 23-24. And then for transitional kindergarten, he's proposing a delay, so not a cut, but a delay. We were expecting 550 million for our TK and preschool facilities in 23-24, and the delay is proposed to push that out by 1 year to 24-25. Cash does oppose both of those, though we're actually very encouraged by the school facility program item, and that's because with a widening budget gap, and those dollars not being on that constitutionally protected Prop 98 side, but on our non-98 general fund side, they could have been ripe for the cutting and using those funds to plug the budget hole. But instead, the governor is really maintaining his commitment to the school facility program, to our core new construction and modernization. We are disappointed at the proposed cut for transitional kindergarten. I've talked to you over the last number of months about that, and we're hopeful that that will not be cut and it will be maintained, but really it's a delay, it's not a full cut. And so the language that's being used by the administration is that they understand that it may propose a challenge to school districts as they're implementing TK, but they still maintain their commitment to fund the full amount. So let's, where are we in the process? The legislature is now considering the governor's May revision updates. They are starting to take sort of final actions within each house to say, this is my Senate budget, this is my Assembly budget, and then they'll have the framework for the three parties to negotiate those final details, working towards the June 15th constitutional deadline to pass a budget. One little wrinkle here in all of this is that the feds extended the tax filing deadline for folks who are affected by natural disasters in the 22 calendar year. And so for most tax filers in California will be able to defer filing those taxes until October if they so choose. And so the administration is saying, well, that makes it more uncertain on where our revenues are going to come in. And so it makes it a little bit harder to make some of these budget decisions. So what we could see is something that I know Nancy has talked to you about in the past, which is budget is passed for June 15th to hit that deadline. And then the legislature and governor may need to come back later in the year once that fiscal year has started to make some adjustments based on the reality of what's happening. The Legislative Analyst's Office is encouraging the legislature to make some hard decisions rather than to defer those hard decisions, because if they defer, what'll end up happening is programs that have already received disbursements, well, they may remain whole or they may not have a cut, but programs that have not yet received their full disbursements once you're in that fiscal year could see their programming cut just by necessity if those revenues don't come in. So that's kind of where we are on budget. On bond, let's talk about a bit about where we are, because we've got exciting developments on our state school bonds. We have a dollar amount now. So AB 247 was updated and now specifies a $14 billion K through 14, so K through 12 and community colleges bond for a 2024 ballot. We still don't know if it's March or November, and that's going to really be subject to the conversations and negotiations of that larger constellation of issues that the legislature, the governor, and others may want to place on the ballot in 2024. But we're really excited to see that dollar amount. The split on the programs and how much goes to community colleges, how much goes to K-12, how much goes to the individual programs within those, that is still TBD, and we're expecting that to happen a little bit later in the process down the road, but just really excited to see that $14 billion amount. It did pass out of the Assembly Appropriations Committee. We have not had any no votes yet on the bond as it's moved through 3 committees. And then we are expecting a vote on AB 247 by the full Assembly at some point between now and June 2nd, which is the deadline to pass bills out of the House of Origin. So we're really excited. And I did see a question come through. Any idea why CASBO is saying it's a $15 billion bond? I think that's a mistake. So somebody may want to raise that for them, but it is 14 billion in the legislation. We had the same question too. Probably just an inadvertent mistake. So as far as I did want to spend a little bit of time this morning talking about what is in AB 247, because I know we haven't really talked about that in detail, and we've got some time this morning. The bill was amended recently to include a number of program specific elements for K-12. And these are things that we saw in AB 48, which put Prop 13 on the ballot in 2020, but not everything that was in Prop 13. So I just want to outline some of these things for you. AB 247 does include small school district assistance. So that would provide a reservation of bond authority up front so that you could design your project and then come back, and the bonding authority would be there for your project when you're ready to actually move to construction. There's also a construction management grant of 5% as a preliminary apportionment to help you get your project together and put the application together and go through your agency approvals. So that's in there to help support small school districts. There's an energy efficiency grant in there, a supplemental grant of up to 10% for specific energy efficiency design criteria. There's a sliding scale on the state match. Now, really important here, this is for new construction and modernization, to highlight that nobody's state share would go down, but your state share could potentially go up by up to 5% based on your unduplicated pupil count and your assessed valuation. There's a provision in AB 247 to allow replacement under the modernization program for buildings that are 50 years old or older. There's a provision related to minimum essential facilities and allowing you to access additional state funds to help support the construction of a gymnasium or a library or a multipurpose room or a kitchen if the one that's on your site is insufficient and doesn't meet the CDE recommended sizes for those types of facilities. So that's really about parity and helping with equity on our school sites. There's lead mitigation in there, so funding to be determined, but support to help with the replacements of faucets and fixtures and pipes. And there are also provisions related to an inventory of your school facilities, basic information to help the state really understand how many, the condition of our classrooms, square footages, that type of thing. So it's not a full-blown condition assessment, but more some information on your site sizes, your facility sizes, that type of thing. There's some emergency assistance for interim housing, and then there's a provision that would require processing by the Office of Public School Construction within 90 days of receipt of an application, and then sending that application to the State Allocation Board within 120 days of receipt. So there's a lot there, and I encourage you to take a look at it, but there's some great components that have been added that cash supports. Now, what are the key differences? key differences between SB 28, which is the other state school bond that cash does not support, authored by Senator Glazer. That's on the Senate side. It's a $15.5 billion bond. We have a lot of questions about, well, what's the difference between these two bonds? They look very similar. Three key differences that I want to mention. The first is that SB 28 does include UC and CSU. And as much as we love our higher education partners, go Bears, the voters are not convinced that they have the same level of need as K-12 and community colleges, and therefore the support is not as high for UC and CSU. And ultimately, it could be a liability when we go out to convince voters to support this bond. Another key difference is that SB 28 includes a priority points process for distributing funds. So it would change which projects receive priority for funding under our program. And it would also include quarterly processing. So it's a quarterly competition. This is different than those processing timelines in AB 247 because it says we're going to prioritize some projects over others. And what that means is that for most school districts in the state would never know if their project would be funded. Under our current program, it's a question of if, a question of when. When you meet those eligibility criteria under modernization or new construction, you know that you'll receive state funding. It's a question of when. Under SB 28, it would become a question of if, and that introduces too much uncertainty into our program for most school districts in the state. The last key difference is that SB 28 does include increases to local bonding capacity. So if you remember any activity on your Nextdoor or your Facebook during Prop 13, there was a lot of criticism of this because it was perceived as a potential local tax increase. So that's still in SB 28. That's something that we do not believe is wise to include in a bond because it creates a lot of confusion about impacts on local taxes. So with that, I know there were a couple of questions that popped up in the chat, and I really appreciate your indulgence in letting me go through this because I don't think we've really had this conversation. Had a question about, is it possible both measures could make it on the ballot? The answer to that is these are vehicles to have a conversation about what ends up on the ballot. So no, we will not see both items on the ballot. The legislature, the Senate and the Assembly, these are really proposals for them to have that conversation and then to have the conversation with the governor and the administration. And let me just take a quick peek and see if there's anything else. I'm going to defer that question on the default and the debt because I think we may have a federal update on the agenda. And then, questions on the deficit. So there was a question about maybe it's not 31.5, maybe it's 34.5. Good point. The Legislative Analyst's Office is saying that the governor is actually being overly optimistic in his revenue projections, and they think it's going to be a bit worse. And so, yes, that would all factor into the conversations on the operational funding side and what that minimum guarantee is for schools. So with that, Alan, I know, did you want to add or should we shift over to Ian?
Just more of a comment that I think that the budget conversation about what the final budget is going to continue for quite a while. And we may see these little changes that go between, whoever's doing that calculation. This is all part of the process as we kind of narrow down to what the final adopted budget would be. And then we start that process over again, where we reanalyze again next year and make adjustments throughout the year as necessary to keep us within budget. So I don't really put too much stock in these little adjustments. Although I don't know if $3 billion is a little adjustment, but these little adjustments. So thank you, Rebecca. So what I took away from that is we still have a bond, right, which is a positive thing. It's $14 billion for AB 247. We still have $2 billion of general fund as a bridge to get us to the 24 bond, which is fantastic. And although we do maybe have a slight reset of some of the Prop 98 money, it's still at significantly historical highs. We're something like 30% over what we were just a few years ago. So, Yeah, we take the good with the bad, but it's still we're still in really, really good place. So, Ian, I see you're there, and I want to give you some time to talk a little bit about maybe some of the regulatory stuff and legislative that's going on.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, so those are what Rebecca has talked about, the bond and the budget. Those are the significant funding pieces for school facilities, right? So very important issues. The other issues that we're looking at and following around is climate change legislation and proposals, both at the governor is talking about it, right, with his climate change bond. He's currently negotiating with legislative leaders on that, and he's talked about that. Not a lot of detail, but a significant priority for the administration, along with the school bond, and we hear the mental health bond as well. So a very important issue. In terms of the school bond, there is nothing in it right now, but there's a lot of pressure and discussion around what should be in there and not in there related to some of these climate change mitigation strategies. We, of course, always remind folks that we want to make sure there's enough general purpose funding for to build and modernize and maintain in some instances schools. So we want to make sure that maybe some of those discussions are if there's funding in the budget process or federal money or other places. But what I'm going to focus on a little bit here, though, is of course bills that have been introduced in this area, because in addition to the governor, legislative folks also are very interested in the broad category of climate change. Think a little bit for us in school facilities, it's a little bit more useful to talk about it more as health and safety issues, right? Resource issues, because that's what it comes down to. Air, water, energy, natural and human disaster resilience, things that all related to climate change, but really this industry sees it a lot as health and safety issues. So one bill I'll highlight is a water testing bill. We know that AB 746, almost 10 years ago now, required testing, but this will require more testing at a reduced level of from 15 parts per billion to 5 parts per billion, which will definitely open it up. So we're working on the details of that, trying to reduce the fiscal impact of that, but that's an area that continues to be popular among policymakers. And then maybe the biggest non-bond funding issue in school facilities is the concern for extreme heat, right? Both inside the classroom as well as outside the classroom. The bill that was aimed, AB 384, about interior temperatures has become, we think, much more rational, would require the Department of Education to do a study and to gain some input. We think that's a good approach. There's another bill, however, that focuses on outside, requires essentially what it comes down to is a lot of requirements for landscaping, replace existing pavement and put in more trees and so on. And so we're actually opposing this bill because we think there's a lot in the green code and already existing a lot of requirements, and there's a lot of duplication there. So that's kind of what we're doing in the legislative arena. We're about at the halfway point right now. The bills are getting better, but we're still working on pieces of them, of course, looking at the fiscal impact and coordination between the state agencies, which is becoming increasingly an issue going forward, because there's a lot of priorities and regulations coming down. So I will say I wasn't able to talk a lot about bills, but as Alan said, the Cash Legislative Advisory Committee is going to be having a meeting on June 16th, and we encourage you to join that if you want to talk more about these specific bills. We don't have enough time to go into all of them, but again, getting better, but we still have some more work to do in the second half of the legislative session. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ian, and all of the team and all the hard work that you're doing to really doggedly stay after these bills to make sure that we're adequately representing the interests of our members and moving forward. So thank you for that. But before you go away, I think we're going to call you back and move to the next slide and a quick little update on the School Energy Coalition.
Yeah, the School Energy Coalition, of course, is doing all the things that they're doing. In particular, we don't want to forget about the NEAM, I guess 2.0, 3.0. I can't keep track of it. Of course, that's a real key. There's nothing right now, but I mean that is a real kind of a bedrock issue, because that goes to whether or not all these programs really pencil out. And so that one, as well as some of the issues that are being talked about with regard to school bus EV charging, pieces like that. Recently, there's been a proposal in that area. So those pieces, as well as looking at some of the issues that Cash looks about out in terms of obviously more energy oriented things, and seeing whether or not they pencil out. Alan, also, while I'm here, I don't know where, while I'm up though, Dave Walrath asked me to give quickly a federal update, and it's very, very quick. Nothing's happening until we get this debt ceiling thing taken care of. And so basically there's no real updates other than that. Although that is to say, a lot of focus, Cash, of course, and our staff on the funding that is available for at the federal level. All the things I've talked about, many of the things that Rebecca has talked about. If you look going forward, it's going to be federal money, and there's a lot of rulemaking and so on. So we're looking to be involved in the rulemaking, as well as get the information out to Cash members as soon as possible. Really, again, going forward, that's where a lot of the funding will be. So
yeah. Thank you for that. I know there was a question that popped up about what maybe the impact might be if the feds went, if they weren't able to settle this debt ceiling issue. And I think the short answer is we just don't know at this point what those reactions or what those results may be and how they may impact us. But we're keeping a close eye on that. We do have folks that we're working with in Washington to really keep their fingers on the pulse of how this may impact schools, and as we know more information will come out as we move forward. So thank you for that, Ian. Thank you for the work on the Energy Coalition, which is a huge issue for school districts as we're being really mandated more and more to be in the world of renewable energy and battery storage and sustainability, all of those different areas. So thank you for all that hard work. So we'll go ahead and move forward. Next slide. So now we're going to call up our vice chair, Mr. Tom Pace, who's been working really hard with his team to really follow on the heels of what was a spectacular 44th annual conference and build on the 45th conference. So Tom, take it away.
You know, Alan, they just, as I was waiting, I saw that Tina Turner passed away, and one of her favorites of her songs for me is The Best. And when I think of the 44th conference, I think of the best conference. And we're working very hard to make sure that the 45th lives up to that high expectation. Over the past month, we received 200 proposals for next year's conference, and just wanted to give a big thank you for all those who took the time to submit an idea for content at next year's conference. And the planning committee that's going to meet this afternoon is going to start reviewing all of those submissions and make some recommendations. So that's the work that we're in, is planning for next year's conference. And so my update really is save the date. Next year is our 45th conference. Be held in Sacramento, as you can see, February 28th through March 1st. So that is the quick update I have surrounding next year's conference, and look forward to seeing everyone at a conference that most likely will be in the midst of a bond campaign in some shape, form, or fashion, hopefully. So be a great conference to attend.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for the planning committee and all the folks that are working hard to make it yet again the best school facilities conference in the industry. So look forward to seeing everybody there. Put it on your calendar. We really want to see everybody there to really be a part of this this great community that we have. So with that, we'll move into the next. We've reached kind of towards the end of our agenda here. So just a reminder, the cash job exchange and people's choice opportunity. So members, we please want to encourage you that if you have need for high quality staff, like we all do, or you have an RFP that you're releasing to the industry, take advantage of the portal, take advantage of the job exchange portal where you can post those opportunities. If you're a person that's maybe looking for an opportunity, you can look at that to see what's available out there. So really take advantage of that, really reach a wide, diverse audience of all of the most public and private members that are part of CASH. And that is an opportunity that's available to membership. So with that, we'll jump into the next slide. And just as a reminder to everyone that the next CASH day will be Wednesday, June the 28th. Again, from 11 until about 12:15. So we do want to make sure that we see everybody at that meeting where we try to bring in all of our state partners to give us the latest update on the happenings up here in Sacramento and some of the policy changes and the work that we're doing in CASH to make sure we support you as the member. So look forward to seeing everybody at the next meeting. Appreciate all the engagement and the questions. Really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you to the panelists and all the folks from our state partners for being here today to kind of share what's happening in their area. So we are a little ahead of schedule, but I will give everybody the gift of time and thank you for being here and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Thank you all. Have a great day.